Right, hello everyone. Thank you for tuning in today. So this is my first live presentation, so bear with me. Mary asked me if I wanted to do a bit of a session, and I thought I'd jump at the opportunity. So I hope I do okay for you all. So today, basically, I'm going to be covering a bit about report changes for beginners. So I'm not a developer. I'm still quite an early Business Central user. I've been using Business Central for a couple of years now, but I'm basically self-taught in the system. So let's get this show on the road. So who am I? So basically, I currently work at Bootcamp Cloud. I manage the support team over at Bootcamp Cloud. So we're looking after all our Business Central support customers. I am a self-taught system user, so I'm not a developer in any way, and this session isn't a developer-focused session. This is more around end users and functional side of things, just to show how easy it is to make changes to reports. Used to be a personal trainer, now turned BC expert of some description. So yeah, after a nasty footballing injury, and I've changed my career completely. So for the better though, so now joining the community, which is great. So the agenda for today. So basically what we're going to be covering is we're going to cover off what are report layouts, so where you can find them, what this covers. We're going to look at creating custom reports and exporting to an RDLC file. So an RDLC file works with a system called Microsoft Report Builder, which will look at the functions of that as well. And then we're going to cover some basic design changes. So how to add logos, how to change font, how to add things called expressions. And then to finish, we'll assign layouts to specific customers and vendors. So it's quite personalizable. You can really change things for different customers and different vendors. So the type of reports we're going to look at today are more of the client-facing reports. So we're going to really look at sales and purchases, and then we'll have a demo at the end of all my slides. So kicking off, so what are report layouts? So there is a page in Business Central called Report Layout Selection. So this is where it holds all the reports on the system. So this can be from the aged accounts payable report. As you can see on the screenshot there, you've got the chart of accounts, but it also holds all the client-facing reports as well. So you've got the sales order, purchase invoice, sales quote, anything like that will hold in this report layout selection. And this is where you select what your layout you want to send to the clients. So obviously we'll put it into practice in a bit. I can show you from start to finish, but this page is basically the hub of all reports. So everything built in or custom, if your partner has created any reports, they'll all show in the report layout selection page. There are two main client-facing report selection pages. So you have sales report selection. You also have purchase report selection. You do have a lot more as well. So you can see in the top right-hand corner, we have you've got inventory, cash flow, warehouse, bank account, insight works, and reminder and finance charge as well. So these pages are where you select a specific report ID for a specific usage document. So you can see from report selection sales here. So these are all the sales documents that are within Business Central. So if we were going to send out quotes, this is the one that's highlighted. This is going to be using report ID 1304. So how the system works, it links the sales report selection page to the report layout selection. So it links the two together. So it's looking for a report ID, and that's what it knows it's got to send to that customer. And likewise for purchases, for example, on a purchase order, it's looking at this page and looking at what report ID is going to be used to send to customers, or send to vendors, sorry. So these are very important pages when you are looking to choose a specific report and select it for a specific document. And like I said, obviously you've got all the warehousing reports, you've got the bank account reports, Insight Works, Reminder, Finance Charge, and Inventory and Cash Flow as well. So these are all related pages where you can select specific reports for specific usage documents. Today we're just really going to be covering the sales and purchase side of things, but just for your reference, you have got all them pages as well. Then you've got custom report layouts. So there is a custom report layouts page where you can create and edit any report in the system. So where I showed you the report layout selection, you can then create a custom report layout for any report ID. So on this screenshot, you've got a couple of random ones. So account schedule, customer list, draft invoice, pro forma invoice. So you can literally edit any layout you wanted to. And this page is not the live report. So you can edit a report and you're not going to damage, you're not going to affect anything within Business Central. So if you wanted to have a play around with a pro forma invoice, for example, you can export this layout, you can have a play around with it, you can add a logo, you can change some font, change the layout completely. And until you set that in the report layout selection, nothing will change. So this is really a great way you can have a play around, you can have a test, you can really see how easy it is to change reports. And obviously I'll show you when we go and do a bit of a demo. You can see there's two types of reports. So there's Word reports and RDLC. So obviously Microsoft Word, everyone knows Microsoft Word. Today I'm really covering RDLC. Ever since I learned reports, I found that RDLC is a great report type. It uses Microsoft Report Builder. It's so easy to use and so easy to make design changes. And like I said, I'm not a developer, so I'm not trained in development at all. So hopefully at the end of this, you can see how easy it is to make basic design changes and set them as a specific report. This is what Microsoft Report Builder looks like. So from first sight, it looks a little bit horrible from my point of view. I didn't really like all the expressions you've got on the main screen. You've got report data, and if you're not technically minded, this might be a little bit scary for you. But basically how this works is obviously it's a standard Microsoft system. You can download it, install it free from the Microsoft website. You've got the report data, which is pulling through the information from a specific data set. So in Business Central's case, the data set is pulling through information from Business Central. And then you've also got the properties box, which is where you would normally change fonts, change the colours, you can change background colours. A lot of information is not relevant to making design changes. A lot of it, sometimes the developer would make the more complex changes. But like I said, you don't need to be a developer to make basic design changes on the system. Then you've got, these are the key points. So expression, I mentioned expression before. So I don't know the official term for expression. The way I learned it was, this is basically pulling through a specific value from the data set. So this here, for example, so this is pulling through a ship to address. So it's going to look on Business Central, it's going to look on that sales document, and it's going to find a value which points at the ship to address. So as long as that document has something written in that ship to address 1, so the first line of the shipment address, then it's going to pull through to this report. And that's all the expression is. It basically pulls through a value or a field from the data set. And obviously in our case, the data set is Business Central. Like I mentioned before, the properties box is where you really can make changes to the design layout. So you can change the color of your font, you can change the size and what the font is. There's also options where you can set it to can grow and can shrink. So whether that means is if you have more text in a text box and you want that box to grow with how much text you've got in there, you can set the setting as true. And likewise, again, you can set it with shrink as well. Like I said, we'll go through this in a lot more detail when we do the demo, but it's very straightforward to kind of how to make these basic design changes. And when I first looked at the expression, it looks quite not an obvious really sentence. It's really, but when you pick apart this line, it's looking at a field, it's pulling through a value, and this main thing in the middle is where it's finding that information from. And we're going to create an expression when we do our own report in a second, but just wanted to show it is very straightforward to try and understand. Then you can also set layouts on specific customers and vendors. So if you set a report on as a default report on your report layout selection, then that will be used for any customer or any vendor. However, if you wanted to set a specific customer report or a specific vendor report, you can do that on the customer and vendor card. So this is sometimes very useful for if you want to use different bank accounts. If you've got a euro bank account, a US dollar bank account, or GBP bank account, whatever you wanted to use, you can have 3 different reports for each currency, and then you can set and assign the specific report. So for all UK customers, you set it for the GBP document, and anytime you would then do a sales quote or a sales document for that customer, it would automatically use that specific report layout. And likewise for the American customers or European customers, you set up the specific report layout and it would work off the customer card. So this basically goes above the report layout selection. So if you set a document layout on a customer or vendor card, it's automatically going to pick that one for that specific customer. But it's quite a nice function, especially if you use multi-company information. So if you have a couple of different companies within your system, within your Business Central tenant, then you can set different document layouts with different logos and different banking information to different multi-companies. So it's very straightforward to set them up as a specific customer and vendor. Right, so I've briefly gone over the few slides. I want to spend the majority of the time kind of putting it into practice and showing you really how easy it is to make specific design changes. So if I get Business Central up, so this is just my company, very original name, Harry's Company. So the first place we want to look at is the report layout selection. So I'll show you that this is where Business Central holds all the reports. So it does take sometimes a few seconds to load up. Obviously, it's pulling through a lot of reports from the system. And like I said, this is where any report in Business Central, so it can be trial balance by period, customer list. So anything like this is classed as a report. You can export this and you can run this and see what it looks like. But like I said, today we're looking at the more client-facing documents, the sales documents and purchase documents. So we want to look at sales, for example. So if we search for sales, we can see all the sales reports that are held in the system. For today, we're going to look at the sales quote. So as standard, so this is the report ID 1304. It's linked to the sales quote, and its selected layout at the minute is an RDLC built-in layout. So this is where we would change it if we wanted it to be something else. So we can set it to a Word built-in, or when we've created one and really edited one, we'd set it to a custom layout. So this is where the system is telling the sales quote, whenever we print it, it's looking at this page and saying, oh, what selected layout do I need to pick? So at the minute, it's just going to be the built-in one. So if we run this, for example, and we'll show you what this one looks like at the minute. So in preview. So at the minute, it looks like this. So a lot of information we don't really want, not laid out very well. So it's going to be a good example for us really to kind of strip this down, add a logo to it, add a footer potentially. But this is how the sales quote looks like, and this is what it's pulling through from the report layout selection. So then what we check is the report sales selection. So this is the page that I mentioned before, where you have different ones for different areas of the system. So warehousing, inventory, purchases. So for today, we're looking at the sales side of things. So usage, like I mentioned, is what the specific document is. So we have all these sales documents in here. So customer statements, shipments, credit memos. So today we're looking at quote. So we'd select the usage quote. So now that's telling us what report ID sales quotes are going to be used. So it's using 1304. So that's the one we looked at. So that's fine. This is the report caption, which is automatically assigned to this report ID. On this page as well, you can also set up an email body. So if you were going to email quotes out to customers or email documents out to customers, you can set up an email body. And this is basically just like a Word document with a couple of lines that would normally send as an email body. So you can set it as like a template, and instead of you having to type it out on Outlook all the time, you can then use it as a default layout, which I can briefly show in a bit if we have time. So we've now got the report ID. So you always check the report selection sales to see what report is being used. So we've got the report IDs 1304. We can now go back onto report layout selection, and we can go on to process and custom layouts. What this does, it opens the custom report layout selection for this specific report. So it filters automatically to 1304. So at the minute we've got a few standard ones. These are just Word layouts. But today I'm going to do the RDLC files, and we can have a bit of a comparison at the end between a Word and an RDLC if we get time. And on this page, it's as simple as creating a new one. So we can create a new custom report layout. So insert RDLC. Report ID is 1304. It's automatically filled in for us. And then we press OK. And that creates a new line. And we can see it's copy of built-in layout. So that is what we want. We know that report layout selection is using the built-in RDLC file. So we are now going to edit what's live in the system. But like I mentioned, if you edit anything on this page, unless you set this to active, it's not going to make any changes to the report when you send or when you print a sales quote. So it's only when you make this line active is when it makes changes to your live system. And that's really a good thing to know, because it means you can have a play around with this page. You can edit reports yourself, and you're not going to do any damage to the system. You're not going to really affect anything because you're not setting it as the live report. I'm just going to call this Power Community. Oh. And now that's my report layout for this report ID. So that's my custom report layout. You can change the description to identify it as something you want it to be. And now it's as simple as, so we can process and run report on here to make sure it is the same one. So I know the number was 1001. If we preview that, we should be able to see exactly the same report, which it is. So a lot of information on here we don't really want. And then it's as simple as we can layout, export layout. So this is basically going to export this line into an RDL file. So it automatically downloads onto your computer. If you don't have Microsoft Report Builder installed on your computer, then it won't open. You will need to get that for an RDL file. And then it's as simple as open the file. The joys of multiple screens. So this is what Microsoft Report Builder looks like. So again, it looks quite techy from first sight, but this is what the report, the sales quote, looks like in the background. So this is what's doing all the technical side of things. We can see from the layout that it kind of makes sense. You've got the customer address on the left hand side, you've got the company address on the right hand side, and if we run this report again, and I'll show you the difference between the two, how it actually looks, and you can really see see the comparison. So this is obviously the report. This is what's going to a customer. You've got the customer address, you've got the company address, salesperson, email, all the company information with bank details, and then you've got the lines in the middle, which is quite standard, and the ship to address in the bottom left hand corner. So if we go back onto the report, that kind of makes sense. You've got all these labels here, which you can see. You've got the salesperson, email, home page, the lines in the middle. So, albeit it's not exactly pulling through the data to this report, but that's because there are things called expressions. So, when you see anything in a bracket like this, that is classed as an expression. So that is pulling through information from the data set. And in our case, the data set is Business Central. So company address 1. So that is going to pull through any information on the company information page within Business Central. So that is the company address for my company. If I click on this one, for example, that changes the properties automatically. So we can see that this is highlighting now the company address 1. So this is the expression. This is where we can really change any formatting. So we can change the color, we can change the font. So if we wanted to change this to red, or brown as it is, it automatically changes on here. We can change the font on here. Font family, so it has all the standard fonts. If we wanted to change it to Berlin Sans, it automatically changes. And again, the size, you can change the size from on this section just around the drop down box. So formatting is very easy to do on the properties box. You can really change all the font, change all the design on specific expressions, specific text box on here, which it makes it good. Obviously, you can make it how you want the report to be. Obviously, reports are kind of personalized to each company, so you want to make sure that it's right for how you want it to look. Then also I mentioned there is a if we go on to another text box, there's a can grow and a can shrink. So this is basically saying that this is set to true. So this is saying that if there is more information within that box, the box will automatically grow. So it won't cut any information off. Obviously you can change that to true or false. Obviously, if you do add more information and it does grow, then you are at risk of losing other information in other areas. So that's one thing you need to kind of bear in mind if you do set this to can grow. And then the rest of the information is kind of you've got the location, you've got the position of it, so you can see the size of the boxes. It goes into detail in terms of width and height, the location, if it's hidden, so you can set specific report text boxes to hidden, so only show for specific reports, and then the name as well. So that is basically the main section of the properties. So that's where you'd really change the font, the size, the color, if it can grow and if it can shrink. Then if we come to the actual expression side of things, so if we go for due date, for example, so this, we know this is going to pull through a due date from the system. So it's going to be looking at the due date on the sales document, and that's going to be pulling through. So you can see there's two due dates. There's one with underscore LBL and one which is just blank, or just due date. There's always going to be a label for each expression. So this allows you to have basically a label for that. So if we go back onto the report, for example, we can see it's got a due date label and then it's got the due date. So this is pulling through the information from the report, and this is basically just a standard label. So not doing anything else, it's just pulling through how the system wants the due date to read. So we can see that via due date underscore LBL, and you can also see it as due date.
Reporting functional reporting.
most cases, most labels are set as bold, so you make you really stand out in the tables. And again, it's as simple as if you wanted to make a label bold, you can press the bold function, and that automatically changes that. So we'll set all these to bold, and that makes these labels bold when you print it. If we right click on this text box and we go on to expression, that brings up the expression box that I showed a screenshot of before. So this is basically what's pulling through the information. So this is the value. So this is what an expression field looks like. Starts with an equal sign, then it goes fields and what is pulling through, and then dot value. So if we go onto the field data set, this is what's pulling through. This data set obviously is Business Central, and these are all the fields that we can add as standard to this report. So there are a lot that we can add in. So description lines, cross-reference numbers. So anything we wanted to add, quantity, trans header amount, we can put onto this report. And it's as simple as removing that. If we press OK, now that's gone. If we go back onto expression, it starts with an equal sign and we're ready to put a new one in. So if we go onto fields and we want to go and find due date label, where this one here, if we double click on this value, it brings this back up. And if we press OK from this box, it automatically brings this label on. So it's as simple as that. You're adding in an expression. You're not coding it. It's already coded in the background. You're just adding and pointing it in the right direction. And if we compare the label to this one in terms of what the expression looks like, the only thing it's missing is .lbl, underscore LBL, because this is coded in the background to look at the report's due date and pull through the report's due date, whereas the due date underscore label is just basically going to say due date. That's it. So expressions are very straightforward to use. So it's as simple as right click, expression, bring up the expression box. If you go onto the fields section, you can really see all the data sets results that you've got, and you can pick and choose whatever you want. So if you wanted to have an email label and then an email, you can do. Obviously, a lot of these things won't be on the sales quote document. So always make sure you've got something that's on the sales quote document to pull through, because these are just all the standard fields on the data set. So that's expressions. Very straightforward once you kind of have a play around with them. And like I said, to add it, you remove one, go onto fields, and then find the one you want. We're going down to due date, and then double click on it. That's simple as that, and it brings through the whole expression. Press OK, and away you go. So that's adding in new expressions, adding in fields. We've looked at properties, and you can also obviously in properties, like with any Microsoft software, you've got the home design bit at the top where you can make it bold, change the color, change the font size, change where it's aligned on the text box. Now we want to get rid of a load of things. This is it's too much going on here. So we want to get rid of quite a few columns on here. So we can basically press Control and then delete, and that deletes these expressions. It's not going to pull through this information to the system. You can still see that there is a text box, but it's not pointing to anything, so it's not going to pull through anything to the report. We can remove these if we wanted to, remove the rows, because it's basically set as something called a tablix, but we can remove these, so we can delete the row, delete row, delete that row, and that just gives some space now. We want to also delete all this stuff here because we don't want it on this section. So we're going to delete it. Automatically, you can see really it's opening up a lot of space on the report. And we know if we're going back onto Business Central, we know there's a lot going on here, and it's not as professional as we probably want it to be. We want it to be a bit more spaced out and a bit more easy to read. So back on the report, we know we probably don't want all this stuff here as well. We're just going to remove and delete them. And now let's remove these just for example, and we'll show you the difference. So it's literally as simple as Control and Shift and delete. Nothing else to it. You're just editing a document. Like I said, most people that I've spoken to before don't realize that it's as simple as this to edit a specific document. People think you need a developer. People have asked me, am I a developer? Because I make changes and reports, and it's not the case, because it's all it is it's like going on to Microsoft Word. You're just getting rid of font, you're getting rid of tables, you're getting rid of boxes. We're going to get rid of the work description line. We don't want that one in. And then we also notice from the actual report that there isn't a logo. So we want to add a logo. So that's another thing you can do on Microsoft Report Builder. You can add logos either as expressions, or you can basically just import or insert a logo into the system. So at the minute, we've got 3 image boxes. So we're just going to delete all them 3. We're basically kind of starting from fresh. We're just keeping the expressions on, keeping the general layout, but we're just removing loads of information. And this is the fun of it. You can just play around with this. You're not doing any damage to the system by doing this. And we want to add a logo in the top left rectangle. So to do that, we can go on to insert, when we right click on the rectangle, and we can insert image. That brings up an image properties box. So as a normal image properties box on any other piece of software, you have the options to change the size. You can set it to original size, fit proportionally, or clip it. You've got some padding options. You can also have visibility. So as standard, it sets to show automatically. But if you wanted to hide a logo for a set amount of time on a report, you can do. Or if you wanted to show or hide based on a specific expression, you can do that as well. And that's basically pulling through specific expressions that if you were set to company logo, then it would show or hide depending on that. So we're going to keep it to show. Then you've got an action functionality. So on client-facing reports, you probably won't have this because they're not going to be clicking on the report themselves. But on other specific reports, you can set a URL to go to an image. So if you wanted your homepage to be linked to an image, you can go to URL and select a URL which links to that image on when you press or when you action it. And then you can also set up a standard border. So if you wanted to set up an image border, obviously standard styles, widths, colors, outlines, and then it obviously gives you the preview. So it's a standard image properties box. We need to now get an image in. So we're going to embed one into this report today. So we're just going to basically import one from our local machine. You can also do database, which is then going to look at the expressions. So you can find company logo on there, and that pulls through the company logo from the company information page. But for today, we're just going to show you how easy it is just to import a logo onto a report. So we select it as an embedded. So we know that's going to embed this logo onto the page we're on, or onto that rectangle we're on. So if we press import, I've already got a Kronos logo saved on my pictures. So I want to open this one up. Automatically brings the name forward. And if we press OK, that pulls through onto this text box. So you can see the size is a little bit out. So we want to format that again. So we can right click, image properties, go on to size. And if we set to original size, for example, press OK, that then makes it too big. So it's a case of making sure you get the size right. So you can just drag it, make it easier. So now we've got a logo in the top left-hand corner. So immediately it changes the style of the layout. It makes it less just all about the words. It's got obviously a logo on it. It's got more spacing. So we're going to do some more formatting changes as well. So we're just going to change the rest of these to red, or to brown it was, to make sure that's in line with them. and then change the font of them. Again, it's just on the property section, so it's very straightforward to just change everything through. So that's in line with the first line. And I think I'm happy with what this looks like. Obviously, you can add a footer on the bottom as well if you really wanted to, just by going insert at the top, footer or header, whichever way you want to do it. I know a lot of reports tend to have bank details at the bottom, so you can add the footer and include the bank details at the bottom. Obviously, I know there's a lot of information missing from this report. I just wanted to show you how easy it is to kind of edit a report on Business Central. So now we're happy with this. We've got a lot of spacing, we've got a lot of gaps. It's going to be completely different, hopefully, to the one that's set in live. We've gone through the font, we've gone through changing colors, we've gone through expressions. So right click expression and you go onto fields. You can double click on any of these values to pull through another bit of information to this report. And from the data set, and wherever it says data set, it's basically pointing to Business Central. That is going to be your data set for the report. And then you've got the labels as well, which is basically just what Business Central is going to call it. So due date will be called due space date, and that's all the label is. If you really wanted to, you can type in due date on here instead of having an expression. That's something called hard coding this to the report, and we'll see it will still show up exactly the same. But if you wanted to change that in the future, then it's just going to have to be you're typing it all the time, whereas expressions are a lot easier to basically just the system can do it itself. And we've got the logo. So now all we have to do is save it. So we're going to save it as Power Community. Save that to my local machine. And if we go back onto Business Central now and go back onto the custom report layouts for sales quote 1304. So we've got my line that I've just exported. So again, we can run this and we can see that this is still the old report. We've not imported it in yet. So we've done all those changes and it's still this report. All we have to do now to change that is if we go to layout, so the same place where we exported it, and then we import, just select open choose, that will bring up the box that the downloads box we were just on, and we've got Power Community, which was from today. If we open that, now what we're hoping for is if we process run report on that line on 1001, we're hoping the report has changed, and it has. So we can see our address has gone red. We've got the Cronus logo in the top left-hand corner, and it's a lot more spaced out. And we've made these labels bold, so they stand out a little bit more. And I think it looks a bit more professional. It looks a little bit better. Obviously, we probably could move the logo to the left. And that's the whole point of custom report layouts. You're always going to make kind of a bit of formatting errors. There's always going to be issues where you think something's not right, but we still haven't set this report as the live report. So we've not changed it in the report layout selection. So we can do anything we like on this layout here, and nothing's going to affect the live system. So we could go back and export it, change the logo again, move it across, and get it right for you, because you're not editing anything in live yet. Once we're happy with it, so say we're happy with that report now, the final step is to set it live in the report layout selection. So here's when I mentioned that you have a selected layout. So at the minute, it's still set up as RDLC built in. All we have to do, if we've done a custom layout, is change this to custom layout. That automatically brings up your custom layout report layouts box. And we need to select the one we want to change. We want to set it as. So we know ours is Power Community. We press OK, and that automatically selects this as the specific report ID for this specific sales quote. We know from the sales report selection that this is the report ID that's being used. So that's how the system works. It points, they talk together. So the report layout selection and the sales report selection talk to each other. If 1304 is selected and then this Power Community selected, or the custom layout is, then that is everything you need to do to push this report live. And we can go and test this now. We can go on to sales quotes 1001. If we print this and just preview it, hopefully we should see our report and it pulls through how we expected. Like I said, obviously there's still a few formatting things we changed, but we don't have time to go back and change everything. But that's the joy of it. You can go back and you can really go and edit anything you want to edit. You can change the layout of things. You can do it all yourself. You don't need to rely on a developer to do it for you. And that's the joy of the reports. And then finally, you can set it, like I said, you can set it to specific customers and specific vendors. And that's as simple as you can go onto the customer card. So if we go onto the customer list and we just go on to 10,000, on here, we can see if we go on to navigate on the customer card, we've got a selection for document layouts. So this page always overrides the report layout selection for this customer. So no matter what report is selected in the report layout selection, whichever one you select in here is always going to take charge. So anytime if we picked just a VAT register, for example, obviously you'd never pick that, but this would now use report ID 13 for any sales quotes for this customer, because it's completely overriding the report layout selection. And you can do that for any customer or any vendor. Obviously vendors are exactly the same. So I'll show you the option on vendors. You can go click on the vendor card, and then if we go navigate document layouts, you select it on here. So you select the report ID, you choose which one you want, and like I said, that overrides the report layout selection. So that's, like I said, you'd only really do that for if you had multi-currency layouts or multi-company information you want to set different report layouts for. So you can set it on there. So yeah, that's really from start to finish how easy it is to edit a report. I'll briefly go over the steps of the 3 pages at the front where I've got a bit of time. So like I mentioned before, you have 2 key pages. So you've got report layout selection, which holds all the reports. You've got custom report layouts, which is where you create your custom layout. This page doesn't have any impact to your live system if you don't set them live. So you can play around with it. You can do whatever you want. And then you also have report selection, sales, or report selection, purchase. Not typed it in right. Too early in the morning. Sales report selection. So this is the page where it's telling the system what report ID you're going to be using. So you can only have one on here. And while I've still got a couple of minutes, I can show you the email body as well. So if you were emailing out reports and emailing out quotes to a customer, that uses a custom report layout. So if we go on to custom report layout again, and sales quote, we know there's one called email body. Invoicing or default email body, that's the one that's being used. That's the one that's picked in the sales report selection. If we run this one, or export it, sorry, that's a Word document, so we can see when this shows up. So this is the report email body that's going to be using. So we've got greeting text, customer address. So the greeting text is what's filled out. Customer address 1, pulling through from the document. Body of text. So this is the email body that gets sent to the specific customer first. But obviously the main thing from today was looking at really the RDLC files and how easy it is to use Microsoft Report Builder. So yeah, so that's really my demo. Obviously, if anyone's got any questions, obviously now's the time to ask any questions. Like I said, I'm not a developer, so please nothing too technical. So yeah, has anyone got any questions at all on anything I've shown?
Okay, thank you, Harry. That's a great session. Well, we don't have questions in the chat box, but I'm gonna take this time to ask question, or viewers, you can also post your questions now. So Harry, so what's the real difference? Of course, we know that doing editing the report in the report editor or in a Microsoft Word are two different story, right? So
Yeah.
could you like enlighten us on what's the difference between the two?
Yeah, so from my personal experience, I find that Word is a little bit more boxy and tailored. It's not as easy to kind of format the reports as easy you want. So I can basically, let me just show you a report, a Word layout, for example. If I edit this one, it will show you, this is from my personal experience. It's more, I find it more complicated and less easy to design. So it's still using the same expressions. So it's still putting through customer addresses, but you don't have as much kind of properties and functionality to really change it. And I don't find it as easy. And it's more kind of boxy and obviously Microsoft Word is a standard word processing software. It's not really, I wouldn't say, used for the design and creation of reports. So it's more of a boxy, less editable software. It still does the job, but I think Report Builder, so if I go back onto the Report Builder now, it looks nicer. It looks a lot more, I think it looks a bit more user friendly because you've got everything on one page and you can just drag and drop. You can just click around. Yes, there's loads of boxes and tables, but I think it really is a lot easier for end users as well as consultants, as well as anyone really on the system can really edit reports. And hopefully from me doing it here, you see how easy it is to kind of remove things and add logos in. So it's my personal preference is using this one, and I try and make sure that I kind of make people aware of how easy it is, and it's not a complex thing to do, is to change reports.
Nice, Harry. So Harry, if you're gonna like have a checklist of let's say, for example, I want to learn of course doing RDLC.
Yeah.
Do you have some kind of checklist on how to do that?
On how to learn? So I don't have an official checklist, but really, to be honest, how I learned, I installed the software and I just played around with a report. So I literally just exported a report like I did today, and I just played around with it. So obviously, understanding expressions are a little bit more complex because most people will never seen expressions before, and that's why I wanted to kind of touch base on that today. But really, a lot of the formatting and the designs, like layout of it, is more is similar to any other kind of software. You've obviously got your font, you've got your color, and you can just literally click around and delete and click around and add things in. You can type things in if you really wanted to. You can insert logos or insert charts and maps and tables. So the way I learned really was just playing around with it. That's the biggest thing for me, because you can't do any damage to your live system by exporting a layout like this. it's trial and error. Like I said, for me, the report wasn't quite right. I'd want to move the logo across a bit and potentially add some more information like a footer, but that's all trial and error. You'd import the layout in, you'd run it, see what it looks like, and then if it's not right, you could export it back out again. You can do some more changes. So the joy of it is you cannot do any damage. You can just basically have a play around with it. You can really have a bit of fun with it. And for me, it's one of the systems that I really enjoy doing. I really enjoy looking at reports. Ever since I started with Business Central, I think it's such a user-friendly part of the system to do, and anyone can do it. I think it's very useful for finance teams to have the knowledge to really do their own reports, because then they don't have to rely on anyone else. They can basically just say, oh, I need to change the logo, just insert a new logo in, as simple as inserting an image and then choosing your image, choosing your box from your local machine. So it's basically just trial and error with me. That's how I learned it. Obviously I can create a little bit of a checklist, and if anyone wanted to connect with me, I've got my LinkedIn Connect QR code on there. So if anyone did want to connect, I can create a checklist, and you can drop me a message, and I can kind of help you learn a bit about Microsoft Report Builder and editing layouts. So yeah, that's really how I did it. It's just trial and error.
Cool. I think in Business Central it's really like that. I mean, we have documentation and Microsoft Docs, etc. But it's still the trial and error. It's a very good avenue for us to learn. Experiential is the best key, right? All right.
Exactly.
Harry, could you do us a favor if you can copy paste your LinkedIn profile in the chat box later on? No problem, so they can follow you.
Yes, of course I will.
All right.
No problem.
Thank you. So, if we don't have questions already, so thank you, Harry, for presenting us this knowledge about report. We know Business Central for a fact that some customers are afraid to do it, or technically they're saying that it's too technical for them to learn this RDLC reporting or even Microsoft Word. So thank you for explaining that, from zero to hero, you learn how to create a report in Business Central.
No problem
Thank
at all.
you, Harry.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I think we're in our second speaker.